Your neighbor is speaking in secrets you never expected, they said you look. Archangel Michael says, the night has been listening to whispers that pretend to be quiet yet carry the weight of thunder, and your spirit is stronger than every word that tried to bend your light. They thought the walls could hold it. They thought the corridors could swallow it. They thought your name would tremble under the soft boots of rumor. Your neighbor spoke in a tone that glided like silk and cut like wire. They tried to describe you with a mouth that never met the truth. They said you look like the storm before a harvest and did not know they were right. They said your eyes carry a final warning. They said your walk looks like a decision that will not turn back. They said your silence looks like a city that has already won. Heaven heard their sentences and set a mirror in front of your heart. You saw the shape of your own endurance. You realized that their secret was not a secret at all, only a shadow that your light made visible. A neighbor can stand 3 feet away and still live 1,000 miles from your destiny. A neighbor can memorize your staircase and still never climb into your courage. A neighbor can learn your schedule and still never touch your purpose. The rumor did not bruise you. The rumor revealed who was comfortable with smoke and who trusted oxygen. The rumor showed you who follows noise and who follows meaning. Tonight the street knows your footfall. The street lamps hold steady like witnesses who refuse to blink. Every step you take folds the night into a new map that your soul understands. You did not ask for a court. You did not ask for a trial. Still the truth rose like morning and called every false word to sit down. They said you look expensive in time. They said you look like patience that never breaks. They said you look like you practice forgiveness and keep the receipts. You are not a headline for bored mouths. You are a letter from grace with your name written in ink that does not run. You are a story that learns the ending before the noise can guess the plot. I bring you clarity like a key fits a lock and turns with calm. I bring you shelter that stands even when the calendar forgets its days. I bring you wisdom that looks like a soft flame and feels like steel. Your neighbor's words tried to build a room without windows. Your spirit opened the curtains and the walls remembered they were never real. The air came in and the lies went out like dust carried by a sweep of daylight. They said you look like you are leaving old versions of yourself behind. They said you look like a suitcase that holds only courage and proof. They said you look like a prayer that refuses to be quiet. Let them say it. Let them catch their reflections in every sentence. Let them meet themselves in the echo. The gate of your house knows your true arrival. It creaks for no one who carries mischief like perfume. It opens for footsteps that walk with intention and clean hands. The kitchen clock kept ticking as if gossip has no authority over time. Your tea cooled at a pace that never agreed to hurry for noise. Your chair held your posture like a promise made to your bones. A blessing does not argue. A blessing stands in the doorway and fills the room until the room becomes a promise. A blessing looks like you breathing without apology. They said you look too sure. They said you look too bright for a hallway built on dimness. They said your smile looks like a bridge that carries others over. You are not too sure, you are finally certain. You are not too bright, you are accurately lit. You are not too much, you are precisely enough. The neighbor travels by whispers, but you travel by announcements inside your bloodstream. You carry a weather that answers to the sun. You carry a timing that keeps winning even when clocks disagree. I place a shield on your doorway that does not sleep. I place a watch over your name that does not blink. I place calm on your tongue that speaks slower than provocation and stronger than pride. Your peace is not timid. Your peace is trained. Your peace has muscles under velvet. They said you look like someone who knows where the inheritance is buried. They said you look like a vault with a code made of character. They said you look like a letter addressed to tomorrow with correct postage. The city cannot shrink you. The hallway cannot subtract you. The rumor cannot invoice you. Stand in the mirror and meet your appointment. Stand in the doorway and greet your delivery. Stand in the center and own your coordinates. Your neighbor carried a secret like a child carries a toy drum. They made noise because silence scared them. They made noise because your quiet asked them to grow and they did not want to grow. Your eyes are kind but guarded by discernment. Your hands give but are not confused about boundaries. Your heart stays open but keeps a lock that understands keys. You will not be stealing light back from anyone. Your light is not borrowed. Your light is native to you. I instruct the night to put its hand on your shoulder like a firm friend. I instruct the morning to bring you names of people who know how to speak life. I instruct your path to step around traps that look like conversations but taste like poison. No house is safer than the one that refuses to agree with fear. No room is warmer than the one that hosts gratitude like a living guest. No street is kinder than the one you walk with your shoulders upright. They said you look like new money in a town that loves old doubts. They said you look promoted without asking for permission slips. They said your feet remember doors that have not opened yet. You are not waiting for agreement to move. You are not waiting for applause to breathe. You are not waiting for permission to be sent. There is a letter with your name on it and it arrived without fanfare. It says you are already chosen. It says the appointment you feared has been replaced by the appointment you deserve. Your neighbor will learn that truth does not live in secrets. Your neighbor will learn that the spine of a story matters more than its costume. Your neighbor will learn that envy is a house with mirrors that never face the sun. Let your posture teach without speeches. Let your schedule preach without microphones. Let your joy speak louder than rehearsed concern. I set guards at your thresholds that see every intention before it learns words. I set light in your windows that turns away insects that pretend to be birds. I set wisdom in your breath so your answers land like soft thunder. You are permitted to change the locks of your attention. You are permitted to trim the garden of your proximity. You are permitted to water only those plants that feed your oxygen. The secret they held was a rope made of threads that never agreed with each other. You do not need that rope. You have wings that make ropes irrelevant. You were always the true headline. You were always the quiet landmark. You were always the address that promise wrote down for its own memory. A calm river runs behind your ribs and refuses to flood. A steady drum plays behind your thoughts and refuses to rush. A tall tree grows behind your spine and refuses to bow to wind. They said you look like a door that closes softly and locks completely. They said you look like a schedule that fits joy on purpose. They said you look like an answer that arrived early. Your answer is the same today as it was yesterday. Your answer is yes to growth and no to games. Your answer is gray sprinkled with boundaries that refuse to blur. I tie your name to a lamp that never goes out. I tie your hope to a rope that never frays. I tie your courage to a rhythm that never misses a beat. You will not defend yourself with panic. You will not defend yourself with explanation that begs. You will defend yourself with the alignment of your choices. The neighborhood can talk until it is out of breath. The neighborhood can hum until the streetlights blink. The neighborhood will learn that your life is not a public toy. You are a private garden with a public fragrance. You are a sunrise that does not need a rehearsal. You are a decision that stays decided. They said you look like a person who knows how to arrive. They said you look like a person who knows how to leave with dignity. They said you look like a person who knows how to stay where love is respected. Your story is not waiting for their permission to end well. Your chapter is not pausing for their curiosity to calm down. Your page is already inked with a tone that knows its authority. I breathe over your room and invite a softness that understands strength. I breathe over your goals and invite a plan that respects your energy. I breathe over your steps and invite order that keeps winning. No apology is required for boundaries. No apology is required for silence that heals. No apology is required for growth that looks like new furniture in an old room. They said you look like a person who stopped carrying a certain sadness. They said you look like a person who traded guilt for responsibility. They said you look like a person who files peace under urgent. You are the author of your doors. You are the steward of your keys. You are the architect of your thresholds. The rumor needed your breath to live and you refused the CPR. The gossip needed your attention to grow and you withdrew the ladder. The lie needed your agreement to sit and you kept standing. Your neighbor stood in the dusk and practiced lines in a mirror that never smiled back. You stood in the dawn and practiced gratitude until the day learned your name. You stood in the noon and practiced focus until distractions lost their way. I call your name the way a lighthouse calls to ships without losing its base. I guard your peace the way a vault holds what matters without bragging. I lift your chin the way a trusted hand corrects posture without shame. You look like purpose in comfortable shoes. You look like kindness with a backbone. You look like patience with a calendar that keeps its promises. Embrace the talk as proof that your steps are noisy to small stories. Embrace the talk as proof that your growth outgrew their chairs. Embrace the talk as proof that you are carrying tomorrow into today. You will find allies who speak like bread and water. You will find rooms where your name is used like a blessing and not a buzzword. You will find eyes that look at you like sunrise and not like a rumor. I place a new gate at the edge of your attention. It opens to mentorship, gentleness, and truth. It closes to confusion, performance, and manipulation. Your neighbor will tire of the secret that keeps shrinking in the light. Your neighbor will taste the dryness of words that feed no one. Your neighbor will either grow or go, and both are mercy. You will not shrink to make anyone comfortable. You will not dim to make anyone feel tall. You will not bend to make anyone feel straight. Your future does not knock, it enters with authority when invited by discipline. Your reward does not hide, it waits in rooms that you build with daily honesty. Your peace does not bargain, it settles where your choices agree with your values. Tonight the sky is wide enough for your next decision. Tonight the air is clear enough for your next breath. Tonight the path is bright enough for your next step. Walk like you own the calm. Speak like you have already survived the worst and are now busy living the best. Rest like the ground itself asked to hold you and is honored to do so. The neighbor spoke and the neighbor will learn. You listened and you chose. Heaven watched and heaven smiled. You look like a promise that kept itself. You look like a door that knows its hinge. You look like a chapter that became a book. Carry this certainty into your morning. Carry this strength into your conversations. Carry this grace into your decisions. The house is safe because your spirit is safe. The road is safe because your direction is clear. Your name is safe because your source is steady. Every window in your life is clean enough for light to enter. Every wall in your life is strong enough to carry art. Every room in your life is warm enough for trust to sit down. I will walk this block with you without noise. I will stand at your gate with you without fear. I will keep watch when you sleep and I will keep peace when you wake. They said you look like arrival. They said you look like recovery. They said you look like a yes that learned how to breathe. So be the yes that chose itself with wisdom. Be the arrival that did not forget kindness. Be the recovery that did not forget boundaries. The night agrees. The morning prepares. The day yields. You are held. You are covered. You are ready. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20. The air around your window felt like a page turning itself. Your breathing adjusted to a softer rhythm that still carried iron. Your name settled into a seat meant for it since the beginning. They said you look like someone who can lift a room without touching chairs. They said you look like overtime wrapped in elegance. They said you look like a good ending dressed as a quiet beginning. You walked to the sink and the water held its clarity like a vow. You watched your reflection and saw steadiness wearing your face. You noticed how every scar now reads like a chapter title instead of a warning. The floorboards remembered feet that used to run and chose not to anymore. The lamps remembered nights that used to shake and chose steadiness instead. The door remembered knocks that once rattled and now sound like courtesy. They said you look like a person who knows where the line is. They said you look like a person who will not move the line to please a story. They said you look like a person who can smile and still say no. Your kitchen became a strategy room without a war. Your hallway became a runway for decisions ready to take off. Your bedroom became a council chamber for rest that rules the day. You wrote one sentence and the room exhaled. You folded one shirt and the week felt ordered. You chose one boundary and the month aligned like stars. They said you look like a door with a password called peace. They said you look like a code that only love can learn. They said you look like maintenance performed by wisdom instead of panic. The neighbor walked by and the wind refused to carry their litter. The path adjusted itself to keep your shoes clean. The trees shifted their leaves as if to applaud without sound. You did not perform innocence for anyone. You practiced integrity that never needed a stage. You kept your record straight where it mattered most, inside your chest. They said you look like an arrival that made traffic behave. They said you look like a clock that trains time to be respectful. They said you look like a map that believes in its own legend. Morning wrote your initials on its first cup of light. Noon carried your resolve across the crowded hours like a steady courier. Night tucked your courage into the corner of your pillow and promised to stand guard. You placed your phone face down like an altar facing inward. You let silence sweep the corners where worry tries to nest. You lit one candle and the flame learned your calm by memory. They said you look like promotion that does not shout. They said you look like wealth measured in decisions instead of coins. They said you look like influence that speaks softly and still moves mountains. You will not chase a story to correct its costume. You will let your living do the only honest editing. You will let your consistency make rumors retire from exhaustion. A cup of tea cooled to the perfect temperature of truth. A notebook open to the first line of a new treaty with your future. A lock clicked with the sound of a promise signing its own name. They said you look like noon on a rainy day. They said you look like an answer that arrived dressed as patience. They said you look like a lighthouse that forgot how to be unsure. Your footsteps learned how to speak resourcefulness in 12 different dialects. Your breath learned how to count victories without bragging. Your eyes learned how to notice invitations without mistaking them for obligations. They said you look like an itinerary that refuses panic. They said you look like a library card for wisdom. They said you look like a bridge that refuses to collapse under borrowed weight. You are not a witness to your life, you are the author with a spine of steel. You are not a rumor, you are a record kept accurately by grace. You are not a trend, you are a tradition that honors what is timeless. Evening leaned its shoulder against your windowsill. Evening asked rest to sit at your table like an honored guest. Evening admitted that your calm is contagious and everyone is welcome to catch it. They said you look like the person who survived the test and kept the lesson. They said you look like the person who fixed the leak and built a new roof. They said you look like the person who can laugh without losing focus. Your keys remembered the order of the doors you trust. Your shoes remembered the streets that grow you. Your bag remembered the tools you never lend to chaos. They said you look like an oath without the ceremony. They said you look like a verdict that makes sense. They said you look like a promise that performs. You picked up a pen and it felt heavier with purpose. You straightened a picture frame and it looked like you were adjusting fate. You watered a plant and it answered with color. The neighbor rehearsed a secret in a mirror that refuses to lie. The mirror sent the rehearsal back to its owner like unpaid mail. The hallway collected the echoes and returned them to silence. They said you look like sunrise inside a closed room. They said you look like a confession that forgives itself and works hard. They said you look like a living boundary with velvet edges. You do not owe attendance to every performance of confusion. You do not owe explanation where your clarity already speaks. You do not owe energy where results will never visit. A letter slid under your door with no stamp and perfect timing. The paper smelled like rain and certainty intertwined. The message said your name as if it knew you better than your own memory. They said you look like a person who will never sell their quiet. They said you look like a person who can turn noise into compost. They said you look like a person who grows gardens where others plant alarms. You stepped outside and the street wore its best behavior. A dog paused and decided to be your friend without audition. A child laughed and the sky took notes. They said you look like a password that changes every time envy tries to log in. They said you look like a firewall of mercy with absolute settings. They said you look like a vault that opens only to truth. Your pockets held only what you need, nothing loose enough to bribe anxiety. Your face carried an expression learned from victory and rest. Your shoulders wore freedom like a custom fit. They said you look like a finished sentence. They said you look like a calendar that respects your margins. They said you look like a compass that refuses to spin. You opened your window and invited a breeze to audit the room. It passed the test and stamped your hour with approval. The curtains applauded and then settled into their better shape. They said you look like the end of a drought. They said you look like a schedule that tastes like balance. They said you look like a song that does not need a chorus to be remembered. Your neighbor will either learn or leave, and both paths bless you. Your neighbor will either apologize or grow quiet, and both outcomes protect you. Your neighbor will either evolve or exit, and both choices set you free. You put on music that refuses to argue with your heartbeat. You cleaned a counter and it looked like resetting destiny. You stacked dishes like plans arranged by order and trust. They said you look like a season that pays its debts. They said you look like a decision that stayed decided. They said you look like a sunrise that knew its appointment. There is a hallway in your future paved with thank you notes to your present self. There is a door in your future that only opens for the version of you that invests today. There is a room in your future where every chair is a milestone. They said you look like a person who no longer negotiates with chaos. They said you look like a person who signs contracts with peace. They said you look like a person who can wait without wasting time. The kettle sang a small victory song and stepped aside. The cup received its assignment and fulfilled it with warmth. Your hands wrapped around certainty disguised as heat. They said you look like the exit sign for old fear. They said you look like a guest list with only your purpose allowed. They said you look like a meeting that ends on time. You are moving through rooms like a well-tuned verdict. You are speaking sentences that do not beg for belief. You are maintaining a frequency that fluff cannot reach. They said you look like a checklist with compassion. They said you look like preparation with style. They said you look like excellence that stays humble. You closed your eyes and watched your future shake hands with your discipline. You opened your eyes and saw the handshake still happening in real time. You breathed and signed the partnership with silence. They said you look like a recipe for calm. They said you look like a contract with joy. They said you look like a savings account called integrity. Your calendar is learning how to bow to your values. Your mornings are learning how to applaud your nights. Your nights are learning how to train your days. They said you look like a staircase without squeaks. They said you look like a car that starts on the first turn. They said you look like a library with a waiting list. You pressed your palm on the door and felt approval. You stepped outside and felt alignment. You walked forward and felt witnessed by good things. They said you look like a syllabus for gentleness. They said you look like a ledger that loves balance. They said you look like a uniform for honesty. The neighbor stopped by the mailbox and swallowed their favorite word. The sky held them accountable without anyone noticing. The wind returned your portion of silence with interest. They said you look like a person who can carry a crown without a mirror. They said you look like a person who can carry a load without a complaint. They said you look like a person who can carry a dream without asking permission. Your phone buzzed with invitations that did not pass the test of peace. You declined without ceremony and gained 2 hours of life. You used those hours to invest where fruit grows. They said you look like a gardener in a factory town. They said you look like a poet with a spreadsheet. They said you look like a leader who understands rest. You arranged your thoughts like a clean drawer. You arranged your tasks like a respectful parade. You arranged your hopes like a museum of courage. They said you look like a story that endures every edit. They said you look like a bridge that collects tolls of honesty. They said you look like a lamp that knows how to last. Your neighbor walked past your window and practiced silence. Their shoes learned the weight of their own story. Their shoulders learned how it feels to miss the easy lie. They said you look like healing with receipts. They said you look like order with personality. They said you look like kindness that does not get walked on. Your laugh returned to your mouth and stayed long enough to decorate the day. Your eyes learned how to rest while awake. Your spine learned how to lengthen without effort. They said you look like a charter for a better neighborhood. They said you look like a treaty signed by courage and clarity. They said you look like a skyline rebuilt after wisdom. You set out clothes for tomorrow and called it respect for your future self. You set out plans for the week and called it a conversation with your goals. You set out patience for interruptions and called it mastery. They said you look like a forecast they cannot manipulate. They said you look like a climate stable enough for growth. They said you look like weather that cooperates with miracles. Your table only holds discussions that pay rent in progress. Your sofa only holds bodies that return energy better than they found it. Your floor only holds footprints that understand gratitude. They said you look like the difference between attention and respect. They said you look like the distance between hype and legacy. They said you look like the bridge between intention and result. You gave your doubts an eviction notice without ceremony. You gave your courage a key and alarm code. You gave your purpose a parking spot with your name painted on it. They said you look like a calendar event named Breakthrough. They said you look like a contact named Alignment. They said you look like a playlist named Focus. The night closed its ledger and declared you in good standing. The moon audited your calm and issued a certificate. The stars recorded your steadiness and filed it under permanent. They said you look like a border that protects joy. They said you look like a checkpoint for truth. They said you look like a highway where distractions get pulled over. Your neighbor's secret found no purchase on your walls. Your neighbor's tone found no echo in your lungs. Your neighbor's narrative found no page left blank in your book. They said you look like the ending that heals the beginning. They said you look like the chapter that explains the storm. They said you look like the moral without the lecture. You are ready for mornings that do not flinch. You are ready for schedules that do not apologize. You are ready for rooms that do not doubt you. They said you look like grace with a helmet. They said you look like patience with a deadline. They said you look like power that prefers gentleness. Your feet will keep the pace that protects your breath. Your hands will keep the work that rewards your sleep. Your eyes will keep the view that honors your heart. They said you look like a yes that chose right. They said you look like a no that saved time. They said you look like a boundary that turned into freedom. You closed the day the way a careful bookkeeper closes a ledger. You locked the door the way a sovereign locks a gate. You turned off the light the way a priest blesses silence. They said you look like everything rumor cannot afford. They said you look like everything envy cannot measure. They said you look like everything patience can buy. Rest now inside the truth that already protected you. Rest now inside the peace that already promoted you. Rest now inside the promise that already proved you. Your life is not a hallway for secrets. Your life is not a stage for uninvited critics. Your life is not a bench for borrowed conclusions. They said you look like the answer they cannot name. They said you look like the witness they cannot dismiss. They said you look like the foundation they cannot shake. Sleep will speak fluent restoration in your ear. Dreams will file clear blueprints on your pillow. Morning will stamp approval on your next brave step. They said you look like tomorrow walking through today. They said you look like wisdom wearing sneakers. They said you look like courage wearing home clothes. Your neighbor will notice the quiet they cannot disturb. Your street will notice the order it now prefers. Your story will notice the pace that fits destiny. They said you look like legacy written in present tense. They said you look like future tense with good grammar. They said you look like past tense finally at peace. Carry this